Hey, free timers. What if chasing financial freedom is actually slowing you down? Everyone says money buys freedom, but what if it's the other way around? In this episode, I'll show you why pursuing time freedom first may be the smarter, faster option. Let's get on with the show.
Welcome back to the Time Freedom Podcast, where you can learn how to rethink your work and your money to create a life you love right now. Join us for insights to help you find meaningful freedom so you can choose how and when and with whom you work for as long as you want. Here are your hosts, me, Brian Herriot, and Kirby Denison. Hello and welcome to episode number 2 of the Time Freedom Podcast. And we were just talking earlier about what's going on in our lives. But before we tell you about it, I just wanted to tell you what this episode is about. So this episode is really around a single chapter in my book, which is chapter number 2, the Time Freedom Formula. And the Time Freedom Formula is a different way to look at your money. It's looking over a year instead of the financial freedom formula. And I'll explain all that in just a bit. But first, more importantly, I'm going to England. My son is in soccer, and his team was selected to go to this trip, and the parents get to go. And so we leave tomorrow, and I need to do all the packing because, of course, I haven't done that. But we're going to spend 10 days on this very soccer-focused trip or football-focused trip, and we're going to go see all these team stadiums, and I don't really know a lot about soccer, but my son loves it, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So I was just saying I'm wearing a new shirt that I got because I just never buy clothes. Anyway,
I love it. Are they going to play any games while they're there?
They are. So all of the coaches for his Alameda Soccer Club, they all come from England and Scotland. And so they have all these connections over there, which is pretty cool. And so, yeah, they're going to play against local clubs and probably get beat up, not physically, but get schooled, because I'm sure these clubs are pretty good. But it's good for the kids, teaches you good life lessons.
How exciting.
Anyway, let me introduce my co-host, Kirby Denison, coming to us from Colorado. She is a business coach and fractional CEO and owner of her company, & Co.
Yes. Thank you, Brian. I'm so happy to be here and just share some more about the time freedom and how it's helped my life and my business and how anyone else can grow from here. Cool. And Brian, for those of you that don't know, is the author of Time Freedom, book coming soon, and a speaker, financial advisor, jack of all trades, has all the secrets behind the goodies we're about to learn.
Do you know the subtitle of my book? I don't know. I bet you don't.
I can't remember it.
That's okay, because I have a hard time remembering it too sometimes, although I'll tell you, the thinking that goes into a subtitle is amazing, like when you work with an editor on that. But let me see if I can get it. The book is called Time Freedom, Rethink Your Work and Money to Create a Life You Love Now. The power of the subtitle is that you're supposed to know exactly what the book is about, because then when somebody buys it, they actually get what they thought it was, and they'll give you a good review. Because even if it's a good book, if it's not what they thought it was, then they can still give you a bad review. That's interesting and something that I learned. Right?
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So what's just very quickly, what's new in your life?
Well, I am in a new office.
Yes.
So this is day 1 in the new office, and it's been a long time coming.
That's why there's no picture above you.
Yeah, there's no pictures. My kids painted the walls for me. I did very little work.
If you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see the.
Yes. So, and we're getting ready to go back to school already. I don't know where the summer went, but yes, let's do it. So today's topic is your time, your terms, and the formula of freedom.
So if we recall from last week, we talked about time freedom as being different from work-life balance because it's broader and a life path and not just a way to survive the week. It's different from financial freedom because financial freedom requires that you're independently wealthy or somehow retired, and it can take a long time. So time freedom allows you to control how you spend your day and your time and be comfortable with still spending money and achieve something in potentially as early as 3 years. The beginning of chapter 2, I tell a story of a former coach of mine. Her name is Laura Wright, and she was a sales coach because I need a sales coach because I'm terrible at sales. And what I learned a ton from her about how to sell services, but that's not what I'm actually interested in or featuring in the book. The book is actually, the story is really about her journey of her personal journey to time freedom, which she has. And I use it because it gives a good overview of the different components of time freedom. So let me just highlight the key parts of the story. You should definitely read the book to get the whole thing. But Laura she's an entrepreneur from a young age, interested in real estate. And she built a nice sized business that got burned in the global financial crisis in 2008. So she pretty much had to start over. And she was with her husband, and they were kind of just making ends meet for a year or two. She was working part time. I think she told me, like, not just part time, but like just a few hours for this sales coach, and was actually doing pretty well at it, but was, not getting paid much. Her husband was in school to be a chef, and they were just getting by. And at one point, they decided as a couple that she should become a sales coach, because she was, almost single-handedly quadrupling this other woman's business and not getting any of the reward from it. But they had no money to start up. So what they did is they cashed out his retirement account and sold their home and moved into a different place, but kind of made this significant life change in terms of their money and their situation, and then use that money to invest in her business. And then, fast forward 10 years from that moment, she was in a situation now where she's, working with people that she loves. The group was these, high achieving, kind, wonderful women and Brian. And it was just a really great, she created this work that she wanted to do. She never worked on Fridays. And also, this is the kicker. This is what made me ask her about it in the first place. At 4:00 Pacific, 4:00 Eastern, because she was Eastern. This was 1:00 Pacific when I was on. I thought it was weird because this was 1:00 my time. I would see this hand come into the screen, but it wasn't coffee, it was a glass of wine. And so every day at 4:00 Eastern time, her husband would hand her this glass of wine. And I'm like, man, you got a good situation. And
Every
that's what
woman's dream.
Yeah. And she basically said, well, my husband invested in my business, and now he's, we're reaping the rewards. And so I tell this story to, it's an extreme story, and I can kind of segment it into the three components of the financial freedom formula, which we can get to at the appropriate time. I don't know if there's anything else that we wanted to cover first. Can't remember.
No, I don't think so, other than kind of jumping into like the 4% rule and some of that financial freedom formula. I think the best place to start maybe is the financial freedom formula, since you're already starting.
Yeah. So the time freedom formula, just as time freedom is an evolution of financial freedom, it's a different take on it. The time freedom formula is an evolution on the financial freedom formula. And so, though it's not really called this, people talk about the 4% rule. And if you're not familiar, this originated, I think, back in 1994, I believe, by this financial advisor named Bill Bengen. And he did this study that has later been, continued to be evaluated and confirmed, and there's variations on it. But the message, the key message still holds true. And that is that you can, for the most part, if you have an amount of savings invested 50-50 in a stock and bond portfolio, and you need it to last 30 years, I think that was the number, in a traditional retirement, you can withdraw 4% of that amount every year. And if you look at all the different time periods throughout history in the United States, you'll never run out of money. I mean, most of the time you'll, end up with a lot of money, but you'll never run out. And that's what people are concerned about. And so 4% rule. The other thing is that, if whatever you live on, if you multiply it by 25, that's the amount of money that you'd have to put into your huge stockpile of money to make sure that you have enough money to retire on. So the 4% rule is the financial freedom formula. And and so I translate that to mean your lifestyle expenses, whatever that means to you. You can spend very little or you can spend a lot. It's whatever is important to you, right? That's the lifestyle expenses. Needs to equal the amount of income you can get off your investments, which is 4% of the total amount. That's the financial freedom formula. Now, why don't I love it? Well, if you're rich, I love it, because you have enough money and you can make that work. But for many people, if you live in an expensive city and you don't have a lot of money saved up, they're going to tell you, sorry, you're not in good shape. And this is like the crux behind the whole financial advising industry, making people feel bad because they haven't saved enough. Well, the time freedom formula gives you another option, right? It's a way for other people to, if you haven't saved a fortune, to be able to still live freely. So what's the difference? The time freedom formula basically adds one more component. So remember, we're at lifestyle expenses equals investment income, but now we're going to add flexible work. So if you look at a year in your life, and if you want time freedom, okay, go with me here. The money that you pull 4% off of your savings plus whatever you make flexibly needs to obviously equal or be a little bit more than your lifestyle expenses. Pretty straightforward. It's just 1 year, mind you, right? And so don't worry, later we'll talk about how do you project that into the future? What if I have college expenses coming in the future? All those are very important. But the first step is to kind of break free from the fact that, your pile of money just needs to last you forever. That's not what we're talking about here. The huge, powerful thing is this flexible work, this flexible income that you can kind of move up and down. Now, what's interesting is often when people do this analysis, you realize that the flexible work income is not nearly what you need or not nearly what you're already making sometimes, right? Because what you're already making, you're adding money for savings and all these other things. So again, we're just looking at this 1 year in time. The thing is, if you create this perfect work that you love, you're probably going to end up making more than you need in your formula anyway. So those are the three components of the time freedom formula. The one other key
is something that you really enjoy, and and that, like you're saying, it's not just an all or nothing situation when you have the financial freedom aspect of just your income, because the financial crisis is, what if you can't make 4% that year or draw 4%?
It's much more flexible. And so what I like to teach is that excellence in one of the components of the financial or of the time freedom formula, one of the lessons that I like to teach is that if you have excellence in just one component of the time freedom formula, you're going to be good to go. And so in the book, I have certain stories. So let me just give you an example. Lorette, she's a personal friend. She lives in the San Francisco Bay Area, has never made more than $120,000 a year. But yet she spends only, I think, $42,000 a year to live on in the Bay Area. Now she's single, but she spends so frugally. She doesn't live poorly. She just finds good deals and she loves it, right? That's her thing. And so she is excellent at that lifestyle expenses part of the equation. And in other words, if you can reduce that number as low as possible, you don't need really high numbers in the other two in order to make your time freedom work, right? So another example is if you're really good at the investment income. So some people have saved early, learned how to invest well, done all the things that you're supposed to do. But in the mind of the financial advisor, these are the perfect people, that if you're good in that segment, and you've got a lot of investment income that you can live from, wonderful for you. You probably don't have to work that much flexibly and you can cover a lot of living expenses. That's the second one. And the story that I highlight there is a friend of mine from a long time ago when I taught for Teach for America in New Orleans. He was a fellow teacher, but now he's kind of he's always saved a ton and he's transitioned and now he's doing the work that he loves, which is financial advising. And then the third component is the flexible work. So this is perfect for someone like maybe my son. In the future, he loves to spend, so he's got a high lifestyle expense number. I don't know how much he'll save. I'm going to try my hardest to get him to save more, but that number is not that high, so he's going to rely on flexible income. So if you are amazing at earning money, entrepreneurial, if you can do if you can win there, you can also have freedom because then you can make a lot of money and you can structure your work in such a way that is completely flexible. So in the book, I feature AJ Harper, who is my book writing coach, a wonderful person, a wonderful teacher. And she has created this lifestyle that's eerily similar to mine, where during the summer months, even longer, she normally lives in New Jersey, but she spends her summer and kind of fall months on Madeline Island, which is an island in the Apostle Islands group up in Lake Superior in northern Wisconsin. And she lives and works from there and has a wonderful time and has a great business that works around her lifestyle.
I love that you, in your book also, and just in your stories that you shared, that it's not just one type of person that can have that. It's different industries, the financial advisors, the authors, for me, it's, the business coaching and the support, admin support or whatever I'm providing. And so I love that it can work for so many. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you have even a list in your book of all the different style, maybe you're a dog walker, maybe you're
Yes.
a window washer. I don't know. One of my favorite stories, and like actually came up when you were talking about your son, is the story about the car. And, he only needs a few transactions selling a car to pay for a month or 2 months of life. And you don't have to do very much. So maybe you have these big transactions that can cover bigger gaps to give you that time off too.
Yeah. Theo has later in the book, I introduce a concept called your catalyst. And so a catalyst is something that you can do that you love doesn't seem like a lot of work for you. It's like one or two things and that leads to like exponential results. And that's the catalyst idea. And
Mhm.
there's three types. There's the exponential skill, which is what
Mhm.
Theo has. So even as a young kid, he's an extremely incredible salesman. So I tell him, just find the most expensive thing you can sell and sell it, because with the commissions, you're going to be golden. Right. The other is an exponentially valuable idea. If you can take ownership
Mhm.
of an idea, really kind of what I'm trying to do with the concept of time freedom, right? People get it. It's not really well known or assigned to anybody. And I want that to be me, right? Because it's going to help
Mhm.
like establish me. And then the other one is an exponentially valuable relationship. So maybe you went to school with some, if you're in business, some high level person at the Wall Street Journal that can get you featured in an article. Like you just have to look kind of far and wide about who that can make. So instead of like working hard to get, in touch with 20 people, this one person can like blow it up for you. Yeah. And so like if you can do that, the beauty of that catalyst idea is that it's not a lot of work for a big amount of return. So it fits nicely into the flexible work component of the time freedom formula. But yeah, in the book, I mentioned all these different types of careers, but actually I can also talk about like some common ways that people do this. For example, if you're a professional and you've worked in a professional setting and somebody retires but they have such skill in the area that then they're come back as a contractor. It's that model, but instead of waiting until you retire, you do it sooner, right? So you're kind of becoming your own entrepreneur as an independent consultant, basically, and working back for the company that you used to work for. A great way to then say like, oh, I don't really want to work during the summer, but I want to work for the rest of the year. That's an idea. Another way is just if you happen to be a high earner and you're working in a normal job, the last hours you work are the highest taxed hours, obviously, because of the tax rate in the United States, at least. In most places, I think is a progressive tax rate. And so if you're deciding, to work 2,000 hours that year versus 1,800 because you have a lot of vacation, please take the vacation, because those last couple hundred hours are your worst earning hours anyway. And so could be much more value for you in taking the time off right there. So that's like a way to kind of convince yourself that it's worth. Just one other one that I'll mention. There's a
Yeah.
whole bunch of them in there, but the other one is around if you have a business that you've worked to develop. I am an advocate of never selling your business. And I know it's an extreme statement, but if you have a business, you have like a money-making machine. And why would you want to get rid of that? For one, you're going to pay a lot of capital gains tax on it. But if you can structure, and anytime you'd want to get your business ready for sale, you're going to have to put systems in place and get it operating without you. Once you do that, just like sit back and let it run, because that is flexible income, money that you're earning year over year that doesn't take a lot of work. And so those are just kind of three examples of how that would work within the flexible work and flexible income part of the formula.
Yeah. And it's interesting. One thing that when you were talking about like the hours being the most taxed, like the later that you are, usually that's when you're earning the most vacation time and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
why not use it? I mean, it makes perfect sense in my mind anyway. So Brian, tell us a little bit more about like how have you implemented this in your life and what has that brought you?
Yeah. So I write and speak and advise now, but that's not what got me time freedom, right? It's what I'm able to now transition into, which is a benefit of having time freedom is that you can start to continue or you can continue to refine your work to be more and more flexible. But
Mhm.
what got me time freedom is that back when I kind of around a couple of years after I mentioned last week the story of Marissa Meyer when I was working at UCSF, and I'm like, oh, I need to be a CEO. No, I don't want to be CEO. A couple of years after that, I was kind of demoted. I don't think it was because of merit. At least I hope it wasn't because of merit. And just unhappy in that job. And I was there long enough to get a pension, flexible income, right? So that was
Mhm.
helpful. But what I really wanted to do was start a software business. And so I did, however, it didn't make any money because remember, I'm not really a good salesman. And so what happened was I took on some independent consulting work and it was really meant to just pay the bills while until the software company started making money. But the software company just made enough money to kind of be self-sustaining, but not really pay the founders. And then eventually I realized that I kind of loved the work that I was doing
Mhm.
as in independent consulting. And I had, I didn't have corporate politics to deal with. I didn't have administrative, headaches to endure. And I was just doing work, implementing change, and it was great. And I didn't have a lot of employees. It was just me. And what I realized is that, oh my gosh, this is lifestyle business,
Mm.
which is what I realize now that this is kind of what I want. It's not just a stopgap solution to try to make some money. And so I turned that independent consulting job, which I started doing in 2017, and that became my avenue for finding time freedom. And so I, fortunately had been saving since I was young because I was on that
Mhm.
financial freedom drive. So I'm pretty good in the investment income part of the time freedom formula, and then I became pretty good in the flexible work part of the
Mhm.
time freedom formula, and those together are what's required because fortunately or unfortunately, it doesn't feel like I spend a lot of money, but I spend a lot of money. And it's because we live in California and our son goes to
Mhm.
private school because, it's important for his education. And so that is how I've ultimately found it. And I also have found is sometimes the fastest way to time freedom is through the flexible work piece.
Mhm.
But for me, it was independent consulting. So I could work a job for a certain number of months, then I could not work a job for those months, and then I could pick it back up again. And as long as the people that are listening to this podcast and reading my book are smart people, right? And so
Mhm.
there's an assumption that you're just good at what you do. And if you're good at
Mhm.
what you do, people will want to hire you. And so then it's just a matter of how do you structure the work to make sure that you're giving them what they need at the time they need it and also doing the same for yourself.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And one thing that I've been able to implement is exactly that, being at home with my 3 kids that I can, work around nap times. I can work when school's not in session or in session and be
Yep.
off by the time they get done. So just having that freedom to work when you want, I mean, is huge. And then obviously, if you're good at what you do, the income follows because you can charge that and nobody questions it. And you're giving those deliverables and doing those things. So yeah, that's really powerful.
One thing I want to mention that I kind of skipped over, and it'll work to kind of close the loop based on that first story that I told. When people hear that story about Laura and her husband and how he liquidated his K to invest in his wife, that some people are like, you know, I don't know if I could do that, right? And I am kind of the same way too. But the thing there to remember is that it's not like an all or nothing kind of situation.
Right.
Whereas I used to, the old Brian would have said, never, ever, ever, ever take any money out of your 401k early. Never.
Hmm.
You're going to get penalized 10% and you got to pay the tax on it. However, now I believe that if you kind of knew you were going to create a good business and you
Hmm.
knew that you could it could free you up in 3 years and you needed some money that you didn't have in a savings account or in
Hmm.
non-retirement, why wouldn't you consider at least taking some of that money out of retirement to create freedom? Like, why kill yourself because of this rule that you've made for yourself that you'll never take it out? Like, I've definitely grown in that regard, and also it doesn't, it's not the whole thing, and
Right.
it could be 4% of it, because 4% should really get you through, or it could just mean I'm going to stop funding my retirement and build up my non-retirement money, my taxable money that gives me freedom. Because for a long time, personally, I had large retirement accounts, but I had no other money. And it still felt like I was kind of living poorly because of that. Like, you got a large house payment and you put all this money in retirement and you're not left with anything. That's really not living a free lifestyle. So, it's okay. I'm just saying every situation's personal, and that's why we don't give financial advice over a podcast. But at least consider different options, right? That's the power of thinking a little bit differently and going, okay, if time freedom is my goal, what are some different ways of looking at things? So
And
anyway.
another thing to kind of add to that is one thing that we've talked about even in the past is like, what's the different interest rates, or like, are you going to be ahead paying that penalty versus, whatever your rate is to get you by?
Yeah. And it comes down to, like, there's minuscule, like the detailed stuff, like what's the really specific penalty or benefit, or what's the exact number. A lot of what I've learned to do is kind of think bigger, like if, let's say you were going to pull out big number, $100,000 out of your retirement, and you'd lose 10,000 of it on a penalty, and you'd lose another 10,000 on taxes or whatever. So you're left with 80,000. You've lost 20,000. But what if you could take that 80,000, put it in your business, and within 2 years turn that into 160? Like, oh my God, that's like, you've recovered the fees, you've made way more than you'd ever make in the stock market, and you're investing in yourself, basically. You're taking a bet on yourself, and they won't all come true, but if you feel pretty, if you follow the methods as I describe it in my book, this is not like a big risk that you're taking. Like, it's slow and methodical, but by investing in yourself, that little kind of penalty could result in a much, much bigger gain.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, do you have any closing thoughts for today?
No, I think, like we always say, please write us a review on your podcast player. What do you listen to podcasts on, Kirby? Do you do Apple?
I do Apple.
Apple. I do, what's mine called? Oh man, I can't remember all of a sudden. What is it called? Hold on. Overcast. I don't think you, Spotify too. Yeah. Anyway, wherever you listen, make sure you write us something. And then if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And then, as we like to tell everyone, always remember to pursue time freedom first and let the money and the financial freedom follow. And next week, we're going to talk about your money strengths and how to use your natural money strengths to position yourself for a life of time freedom.
Sounds great.
All right. See you next week.